to the other side. I'm Dr. Will Miller. Embraced by the Light has been on the bestseller list for 1 year. Millions have been touched by an ordinary woman's moving account of an extraordinary near-death experience. Betty Eadie's book is a revealing and surprising exploration of life beyond death. Now, whether you believe her story or not, it has given many an inspirational and comforting message. Betty Eadie says that when she died, she went into the light and met Jesus. She tells an astonishing story of life beyond death. Welcome, Betty. Congratulations on the success of your book. A very moving story. You died after an operation for a hysterectomy.
Yes, I did. After I had the hysterectomy, it actually was later on that evening that I experienced my death. I died from hemorrhage around 9:30 p.m. and I was alone in the room. I was not attended by doctors or nurses. They'd actually bedded me down for the evening. So
you did not have the story we often hear where someone goes out and then are resuscitated. No one resuscitated you.
No, I was very healthy. I was 31 years old, and they expected me to recover perfectly. And
how did you know you died? Do you remember the moment you died?
I do, very clearly.
What happened?
I felt my body dying, literally, starting from my feet, my hands, creeping up through my body. And it's a feeling that's very distinctive. You know something is extremely wrong. And then there was this tremendous sinking sensation. There was a pop, and then a movement in my chest, and my spirit came up out of my body, at my chest, ran up to the ceiling, and I turned and I looked down, and I could see myself lying there on the bed.
We've heard that kind of experience many times with near-death experiences. Then what happened? Go on.
Well, I came down for a closer look, and I was very, not frightened, but I think I was disturbed for just being alone in the room. And I noticed that there appeared in my room 3 men that were in a soft glow about them. They stood about 2 feet above the floor. And they explained to me that they were my guardian angels, and that they had always been with me throughout all my time here on earth, but also they had known me when I was in heaven before I came to earth.
You've described them in your book as monks. Is that how they appeared, as monks?
They appeared to me like monks. They looked like that, or I'd have to say 3 old men in bathrobes.
And then what happened? You saw a light?
There was a light. And this was sometime later. I actually went home first to see my family. Visiting in my home, I saw my husband and my children. I saw my husband reading the newspaper. My children were preparing for bed. And there was a strange detachment. I felt as though their lives were perfectly fine without me, and that it would be okay for me to go on without them. And then I went back to the hospital, and I was drawn up into this black space by some tremendous amount of force. And while I was in this black space, there were others that occupied this space, going through a transformation much similar to what I was going through. It was very loving, and it was very warm and beautiful, but it was very, very black.
You weren't frightened in that
No,
stage.
I wasn't. I felt a tremendous amount of love there. But then I saw a pinpoint of light, and I was attracted to that light. And I began to move feet first, noting for the first time that my body, I had a spiritual body, and that I had some light in me. It was very dim, but it was glowing. It began to travel towards this brighter light, and that brighter light would be compared to perhaps your sun here on the brightest day, perhaps by another 100,000 times, if you could imagine it. And I just traveled very quickly towards it. As I came to the light, I could see that it was a being, a person, that was emanating this light. The light was flowing from him. And as I got closer, I knew who this man was. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, just like I would know a grandfather or a grandmother, I knew that he was Jesus Christ. And I began to rush to him. And I said to myself over and over as I was running, I'm home, I'm finally home, and I never, ever want to leave you again, almost chastising him for having had to have this separation from him. But he just held his arms out as I ran into them, and he held me, and he loved me unconditionally. And there was a humorous nature about this man.
So you had
I
believed in Jesus before?
Yes, I was raised in the Catholic boarding schools when I was very young, and Protestant as well. So I did believe in Jesus Christ.
When people hear about these experiences, it's hard to convey what the feeling is like. I mean, right now we can all relate to. You're sitting there, we're sitting here.
Right.
The way it feels to move around in our body. How would you describe what that movement was like going through this experience?
It was more natural to me than sitting here and talking to you right now. In that when you leave the physical, and you go back to the spiritual, the physical here seems dead. It seems non-existent, slow, heavy. In my book, when I came back into the body, it was heavy and clay-like, and that's how it seems here. It is very dull in comparison.
Now, how did you know that this being was Jesus?
I knew him. I remembered him. It was a recognition. He didn't appear to me with nail prints in his hands or in any of the familiar ways that we are accustomed to seeing here on Earth, such as the pictures. But he appeared to me, they explained to me that he appeared in what would be all his glory.
Now, is it possible that in this state, that because it was part of your background and your belief system, that it would be expected that, say, in your personal case, you would encounter Jesus, and for another person who had a different kind of religious experience, they might encounter the way God would be manifest in their religion? What is your response to that?
Yes. In fact, I asked about that. It was part of my questioning, you might say. I needed to know. And I learned there that if you had another belief system, God would not shock you out of your belief system, but that you would ultimately, we all would come to know that God did exist and that Jesus existed as well. But, that we would all be drawn to that knowledge eventually.
One woman's vision of heaven and an important message for us all.
Well, heaven was absolutely beautiful, Will. One of the things that I thought was very curious, though, was the large looms that were very archaic, very old-looking, and they were weaving material that looked like spun glass or spun sugar. And then I was taken to the most magnificent garden. It was very beautiful with trees and flowers of all colors, and the grass was very crisp and very cool under my feet. But I noticed that it was as though every blade of grass had intelligence, and it was happy that I was walking on it. I know that sounds very crazy in a way, but it was wonderful. And a flower that I was particularly interested in was a rose, and I was able to enter into that rose by some strange and unusual way, just desiring to be a part of it. I entered in and became a part of it. And as I felt love for this rose, the rose began to expand and literally grew right there with me inside of it. And I learned from that as you love things, they absolutely will grow, not only just physically, but they grow spiritually by that love.
So you come back, and what lesson does that give you as a living person now?
That's what it's all about there. Jesus said to me that our purpose for being here on this earth is to learn to love, and that is one of the most important things. That if we love one another, everything else will be okay.
You really interviewed Jesus, didn't you? You
Yes,
had
I
questions.
did.
Tell us what he told you.
I was so bewildered, I guess, and confused because of the religious training that I had had. I call it a Heinz 57 because I had attended just about every church you could imagine. And here I was experiencing my death, experiencing life, if you will, with Jesus. And I had not been taught these things. And so I wanted to know. And he wanted me to know all the answers. And so as I asked him, he gave me whatever I wanted. He let me tap into what is called pure knowledge. And so I learned many of the laws that govern us here on this earth.
Let's start with the basics. Why are we here?
Why are we here? To learn to love.
How has this changed, Betty?
When I was 31, I was a woman with a great deal of attitude. I was raised in such a fashion to where I had a chip on my shoulder. I had a lot of anger, a lot of, I was very judgmental. I judged everyone for whatever purposes. I went through what was called a ripple effect. And this ripple effect was like a life review, showing that what you do to others is going to come back to you. Not only will the pain that you cause them ripple back to its creator, you, but the pain that others create in other people because of what you've done to them, that all comes back.
Now, you know, these are very profound lessons, but you know, life is hard to do.
Not all people are lovable either.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yes, it is hard to love.
So what help do we have?
I learned that we all have guardian angels. As a matter of fact, I had 8. Now, I thought 8. And I thought, am I a particularly tough case? And no, I am not. We all have many guardian angels that are around us, and not constantly they're imposing, but you may have 2 or 3 at one time, and during your deeper, darkest hours, you may have 8 or more. And they do not interfere with your free will, but they try to encourage you to do the right things, and always leading you and directing you towards the right things in your path.
Do you now, in your sort of day in, day out life, have actual spiritual experiences analogous to that? Or was this a one-time thing from which you took all of this?
No, when I came back from my experience, I came back with a keener sense of spirituality, and I often tap into pure knowledge, not only about events coming up, but perhaps people as well.
But you don't have visions routinely now?
No, I don't. I did for a while, and to tell you quite frankly, Will, I had to pray that they would stop because they were interfering with my life.
It's hard to live a normal
it's
day
hard,
in and day
yes,
out
you cannot
life.
live in both worlds.
How long were you out of your body, or how long you were dead?
The time was not actually known, but it may have been up to 4 hours.
But they never found that out, did they, Betty? They never knew for sure.
No, because I was left alone.
Okay, you said you were up in heaven. Did you see anybody else? Or was it
Yes, I did. I was greeted by what they explained to me was like a greeting party that meets us all. And many of you, if you've had loved ones that were dying, and they might say, oh, here's Grandma so-and-so, or cousin so-and-so, or uncle so-and-so. This is part of their graduation party or greeting party.
As a parent, I find it would be very hard for me to leave my children. How did you handle it?
You know, I felt the same way because I had 7 children that I deeply loved, and my husband as well. But when I left the hospital and went to see my children and my husband, I wondered why I didn't have that feeling of despair in leaving them. But I could see into each of their lives, and I knew that they were here on earth with their own agenda, and that it would be okay that whatever I was needed for in their lives had been taken care of. It was done.
I believe in the spiritual realm also, but I'm wondering how you knew that it was Jesus when the scripture says that Satan can come as an angel of light. Did you ask him, are you Jesus, or what was it that led you to believe that he was Jesus?
He knew me. He didn't have to say, are you Betty? He knew who I was. I knew who he was. And the love, the tremendous love that I felt there. Satan is a deceiver and a liar, there's no doubt.
Well, when we return, we're going to meet a man whose life was completely turned around after reading Betty's book. We're back with Betty Eadie, author of the best-selling book, Embraced by the Light. Betty, your book has been an inspiration to many people. I'd like you to meet Captain A.J. Stewart, whose life was changed after speaking with you on the telephone. Welcome. This is the first time you've met, isn't it, today? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Well, join us. Have a seat.
I feel like we're kin. After I read the book, I feel very connected.
As happy as this moment is, it comes about as the result of a tragedy. You had a very, very painful loss not very long ago in January.
Yes, I did.
Your granddaughter, in many ways, was really like your daughter, who you have raised at 16 years old, was killed tragically. Tell us about that. What happened?
Well, my granddaughter and my grandson both 16. I bought her a car, and they went off to school in the morning, and they were a little late getting home, and the sheriff's department came and told me that they'd had a head-on collision with a county dump truck, and they were both dead.
And you bought the car and felt very guilty about that.
Oh, yeah. I bought the car, and I taught her to drive. And I felt then, and still do, feel that it was my fault, and I felt the only thing I could do was to drive down to the gravel pit and eat my pistol. I didn't think that I should keep on living when the kids were dead.
Now, this is coming from a man. You have been a sea captain. You've been in 3 wars. You have seen your share of death and have had tragedy in your life.
Yeah. I've been in 3 wars and typhoons and hurricanes. I've been torpedoed. I've been bombed. And nothing ever devastated me as much as this. It just tore me apart.
Especially your granddaughter was really like your own daughter. You raised her right after your son's divorce. She was like a daughter to you. How close were you to her?
Very close. I was her very own grandpa.
So you're in the midst of this horrible grief, suicidal even, thinking about taking your own life.
Yes, the sheriffs were incredibly kind after the incident, but they searched the house and picked up all my guns, picked up my car keys, and
fearful that you were going to kill yourself.
Yeah, it's a small town, and they still sort of keep an eye on me. And but after I read the book...
When did you read the book?
Well, my psychologist told me about it, and I went out and bought it, and I read the book, and I just had this tremendous feeling of frustration. I just wanted my kids. And I read the book, and I got some peace and some hope from the book. I just felt that maybe they'd gone to a better place, and I just felt more peaceful after I read it.
Can you describe to Betty what it was about the book that was so healing for you?
Well, one of the things that disturbed me the most is my son is a detective, and he investigates these things. And he said that the kids knew for 6.2 seconds that they were going to die. And that was driving me crazy. And in Betty's book, it said that the spirit will leave the body, and that made me feel an awful lot better that they didn't have to go through the trauma of being smashed. The car was smashed flat, and that made me feel a lot better. And then the whole book in general, it just gave me peace, and it gave me hope. And I'm still slightly suicidal, but it's not something I'm going to run right out and do.
that's a good question, though. In other words, while on the one hand you have peace that your kids are okay, does the temptation exist for you because of what you know is available to you when you die?
No, not really. Just the idea of getting dead never worried me an awful lot. The type of work I did, you pays your nickel and you takes your chances, and I never dwelled on it. If it happened, it happened. And the idea of going out and doing it is just the feeling I no longer have anything to live for. My kids are gone, and my wife is sick, and she's not recovering well from the grief. And but then I got thinking, I've got my wife to take care of. I've got other children. I got grandchildren, and my children are all in their 40s, but they still all lean on Papa.
Betty, what's your reaction?
Captain Stewart called me, and I don't often have the opportunity to call people, but there was just something about the message that he left. And I called him and immediately felt a connection with him, a real love for this man. And when he explained to me that both of his grandchildren were killed in this car wreck, it was the way he said it. It was as though everything in his life had been removed from him. And we spoke for, I don't know, maybe an hour.
Mm-hmm.
We talked.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to let him off the phone until I knew that he was going to be okay. And we've kept in touch. He's called me back. And I love this man. I absolutely love him. And is he going to commit suicide? Absolutely not. I'm not about to let him. But he has a lot of pain. He has been in a lot of, it's been awful for him. And because it was 2 grandchildren, one from one son, the other child from another son, it's almost more than the family could bear.
What did you tell him?
Do you remember?
I don't really remember. But
we just talked about a little bit of everything, but I remember him telling me about his grandchildren, how long it took them before they died, the 6.2 seconds.
Yeah.
And I told him, I says, they probably had already left their body, because when a spirit is in trauma, it does not necessarily stay with the body to experience the pain. I know that your spirit can leave your body and actually be up here somewhere and watch the body continuing as though you were watching someone else. I mean, you're watching your body continue in the wreck, and you're not there.
So you're, based on your experience, in very specific, real terms, it's very comforting for people to know who have a loved one who's been killed, that what we believe they have gone through in terms of pain and terror may not in fact be the case. It could be helpful to people.
And they were only 16, but it was absolutely their time to go. Yeah. They were in a rural area, and the chances, you know, the coincidence, I guess, of this automobile striking another car out in this area, the odds are ridiculous. In favor of them never having this happen.
We're speaking with Betty Eadie about her near-death experience. You asked Jesus why there is pain in the world. What answer did you get?
Yes, I did. I learned that there's pain in the world because it is part of the natural growth process, that if we didn't learn pain, we would not learn joy or happiness. And so some of us that have probably the greater pain are actually the greater spirits capable of handling that additional growth period.
Does that go for horribly innocent suffering, like the Holocaust would come to mind?
Yes,
people
it does.
just victimized in pain.
Yes, it does. And I know that that is very difficult to understand at the earthly level. But if you could understand it from the spiritual sense, in that the spirit is so much stronger.
What about people who inflict pain? Are there negative spirits as well as positive ones, angels?
Most of when you talk about the people that inflict pain, that is basically could be any one of us here in this room. And I learned that these people are just giving back what they have received in life. Often it is even actually genetically coded, some of the trends, I guess, that run through families.
Were you a dysfunctional person yourself?
Well, you know, no one likes to think that, but yes, I had my problems, and I was a real fighter. I had a very bad temper. I was raised in Indian boarding schools, and we had to fight actually for survival.
See, you come across as very, you know, shy, and actually there's almost even some sadness that I feel from you.
I think what you are probably touching into is the sadness for Mr. Stewart, because that was a very sad occasion for him, and it still touches my heart when I think about it. But no, I'm a very serene person now.
You have the best news any human being could ever have, and in a very vivid and real way.
Yes.
Are you happy personally?
I am not fearful, and that makes me happy because, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen to a person? You could die, right? I already did that.
Do you feel like you're a joy-filled person? Do you have
Yes,
joy?
yes, I look forward to every day because I know it's a new day and I can begin all over again.
Yes, Betty, I want to know, did you ever have any religious encounters like this prior to your death experience?
I had a near-death experience actually when I was 4 years old, and it made some impact, I'm sure. But the increased ability for spiritual experiences since my death it absolutely occurs all the time.
I want to ask Betty, what did Jesus look like?
Yeah, anything like the pictures, Betty?
In ways, yes, because they have captured emotion that I could tell that was, you know, a part of him. The love in the eyes, but the color of the hair, the color, no, he was a being of light. But then again, this was in all his glory rather than his earthly body.
Yes, in the Bible it talks about people having visions. I'd like to know, do you think it's more like, it could be a dream or a vision as opposed to a near-death experience?
Or is a near-death experience a dream or a vision?
Well, I think you would have to experience all of these things to know the difference. And I'm an avid dreamer. I love to dream. I dream in color. I dream in black and white. I always have. And I have hallucinated before. After a death of one of my daughters, I hemorrhaged then, and I hallucinated. So I know what dreaming and what hallucination is. What I experienced was actually heightened awareness. And so, no, I wasn't dreaming. I did not hallucinate.
When you were talking to Jesus in the light, did you feel you had a choice, or do you feel you were sent back to this side to spread the word of love to people like us and to people like the captain?
I didn't want to come back because of his tremendous love for me. It was very difficult. I actually told him I was not going to come back. But he
You
said
refused Jesus?
I know, but he's a loving person, and yes, I did. I threw myself down and I said, I'm through with earth, and no one here is going to make me go back. Remember, I carried forth that fighting spirit that I had. But he said my mission was not finished. He says it's not complete, and you need to go back and to do that.
Best-selling author Betty Eadie and her riveting account.
Our purpose for being here on this earth is to learn to love.
Embraced by the Light, today.
Betty Eadie, author of the best-selling book, Embraced by the Light.
Eddie, you said that when your spirit left your body, you could look down and see your body. What did your spirit look like?
My spirit, I'm kind of going to be embarrassed to tell you this, because before I had my experience, you know, everyone, you look at yourself in a flat image, you see a flat image in the mirror, and I always felt I was unattractive. And so right after I died and I came down to look at my body, I could see myself in a three-dimensional view or more, and I thought, my gosh, I wasn't so bad looking after all. And but when I saw myself for the first time in the spirit, the loving part of me, the spiritual part, when you crawl out of your flesh, what is left is the love that you have. And at first, when I died, I was only 7 watts. And then, as I was in the love of Christ, I expanded in his love, and then I became a beautiful being of light.
So in very real terms,
So it
or
was
in
beautiful,
in
yeah.
therapist terms, you had a change in your self-esteem as a result of this experience.
Not just self-esteem, because that is definitely a part of it. It wasn't just self-esteem, but I lost my judgmental attitude.
Changed your whole way of living your life.
It changed my whole religious belief system as well.
What is your mission? What were you told your mission
I don't
was?
know. We all have missions. We're all not to know what they are, because I was told that if I knew what my mission was, I would hurry up, rush out, and complete it so that I could get back.
Now, I'm a minister myself, and so it's not a big leap for me to believe and to be touched by your story. What do you say to people who do not have religious or spiritual experience or faith? What do you say to them?
Well, Will, I receive thousands of letters from my readers, and many of these readers never had a belief in God or any religious belief at all. They never felt that they had purpose in life, and they are absolutely in wonderment, I guess you might call it, after reading the book, because your spirit always knows the truth. It is always tapped in to some degree to this pure knowledge that I mentioned in the book. And so when you hear a truth, it just sends a chill through you, or a warmth. But you always know when you hear truth. And so this is what these people are saying. I've touched into a truth, and so I know that I could now go out and find out who God is.
What about the traditional religions that are very conservative? They have criticized your book. What have people said about your book, the religious people said about your book?
Well, that's interesting, because some people will say, well, I've had people come up to me and say, well, Betty, I'm a Christian, and by dang, your book is no good, and da-da-da-da, you know.
They've said that, by dang, your book is no good?
Well, they said, I'm not going to say it.
They even less appropriate language than that.
Well, I know those other words, too. I'm just not going to use them.
Just not used to hear them.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian, by gum, or whatever.
Yeah. And so basically what I've said to them is, if you have to approach someone and say, I'm a Christian, or, for instance, if you have to have a tag that says mean dog, then obviously you're not what you think you are.
So according to your comment then, when I said, as a minister myself, you were basically accusing me of not really feeling like a minister, is basically what that is. I'm teasing. Betty, you did not start out to be an author. I mean, this was a chronicle of this experience. Here you are now, lived, I wouldn't want to say an ordinary life, but an anonymous life. What is it like now? You're a best-selling author. Life has changed. What's it like for you now?
Well, it's really strange because, no, I did not start out to be a best-selling author, nor had I written anything but a few short poems before I wrote the book. And when my publishing company called me and said, Betty, hooray, hooray, you are on the New York Times best-selling list, and they were very up, and I said, good, good, good. And then I said, what's that? I didn't know. I didn't know what a best-selling list is. I knew that the book was going to be tremendously successful because I was simply told that the book was going to cover the world, literally, and it is.
It's being translated into other languages?
Yeah, 21 languages.
What's it like? You've gotten rich. What about the money? Has that changed you?
Everyone asks me about the money. They have a great curiosity for the money that I earn, and it's interesting because God's given everyone gifts. There's no one here in this room or anywhere else, that even you, that he hasn't given you a gift to use. And you use your gift to make money, as you are right now. And so I'm not going to be the first in line when you get your paycheck to see if you've given that all back to God. And so it's interesting that I write this book and people want to know what I've done with my money. My gift that God gave me is no greater than the gifts that he gives them. But I will tell you that I have a great interest in the Native Americans. I am one. And I am providing scholarships. I don't say that to brag. I say that because I guess if there are any Native Americans, I encourage them in their education. There are other things that I'm going to do. And so, yes, it's different. You know, someone says, how does it feel to be famous? I don't know. I've never been. I don't think of myself famous. I always thought a famous person was someone that floated down the Riviera and drank those drinks with those little umbrellas on it. And I haven't done that yet, so I guess I'm not famous. I don't know.
Tell us about what it was like when you re-entered. Your re-entry.
That was very difficult because I didn't want to come back. You know, I could sit here and be playful with the experience because I was actually told by Jesus to lighten up. I was too intense of an individual. But when you talk about the re-entry, I suddenly feel pangs of I guess, despair that I remembered that I felt back then, because I didn't want to come back to an earth that I felt was not loving. And but I knew that I wanted to please God. And so as I came back to the body and I looked at myself, I knew I had to quickly get back in or I'd change my mind. And so when I crawled back into my body, it was the most devastating thing ever to my spirit. My body felt cold, it felt damp, it was clammy. In the book I said it's like taking coveralls and dredging them through the mud and then having crawled out of a clean shower and then pulling these on. And that's how I felt. It felt dirty and heavy and weighty. But in the body now, I feel restricted and restrained and held back. But I would not ever, and this is why I know Captain Stewart isn't going to do this either, because I'm going to talk him out of it. But I would never, and I would talk anyone out of committing suicide to have this kind of an experience, because it might not happen for you.
In the book, you mentioned a ballerina spirit. Tell us about that.
The ballerina was a spirit that I had met while I was in this heavenly place. It was a beautiful female spirit, and years later, this beautiful spirit I knew came into my life as my adopted daughter. And the vision that was, the image that was given me, how I would recognize her, is that she would crawl up on my husband's toe, and with a lift of the back of her other foot, like a ballerina, she would dig into his pocket. And when my adopted daughter was 2 years old, she did just that. And I knew that I had indeed made that contact with the spirit that I was bonded to previous to this life.
Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Dr. Will Miller's wardrobe furnished by Rick Halleck, Sherman Oaks, California.